everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the first official weekly book steep of 2026. I am here, not with tea, although in my defense I thought I had peach iced tea, like a cordial that I could make up so that I could have peach iced tea for this morning, because it is very, very hot outside. It's going to be 34 degrees here, which is Celsius, so we're hitting the 90s in terms of Fahrenheit, so I need a cold drink. And so we're in my Books Are Cheaper Than Therapy and Twice as Effective tumbler, which I got at a book event 2 years ago? Probably. And I have bitter lemon cordial in here because let's go with refreshing over anything else. This is my weekly wrap up for the week beginning the 27th of December and ending on the 2nd of January. So a lovely cross year wrap up. I read 15 things this week and I'm currently in the middle of 2 others, so a total of 17 books. I have read just over 5,000 pages. Yay for holidays. Like, all I want to do is read at the moment. I had 6 rereads this week. 2 books I read are for projects, so I won't be talking about them in any great detail in this video. And I also DNF'd 3 books at the end of December. So very on brand for me. My rereads, I did finish Magic Triumphs, which I think I talked about at the end of the last video. I also reread Magic Tides and Magic Claims as part of my try and read through all of the main Kate Daniels books before the end of the year. I did manage to do that, unsurprisingly. My last reread of 2025 was The Rest of the Story by Tal Bauer. I read this on New Year's Eve, just as delightful. This is a hockey romance. It's my favorite romance of all time. This is always a good choice. And then the last 2 rereads that I have are Trade Deadline and Off Season by Jodi. These are books 1 and 2 in her Chicago Thunder series. I'm trying to reread through the first 4 books before the 5th book comes out this coming week. These are queer hockey romances. They're set obviously in Chicago because they're following a Chicago team. Book 1 is about a playboy who is trying to reform his image. He ends up meeting a very cute guy who turns out is not willing to be just another number for him and makes him work for it, which I appreciate. Book 2 follows the team captain who has to go to England for a family wedding, and he ends up taking the brother of the love interest from this book with him as a fake date, except real feelings get involved. I'm enjoying my reread of this. I have 2 more books to go and then book 5 comes out at the end of this week, I think. So I'm very excited. Okay, that's it for rereads. In terms of new to me reads, I read House of Omega by Roxy Collins this week. I really enjoyed this. This is an omegaverse romance, and we know that I don't generally go for omegaverse romances. And the story of this one, if you haven't seen my Rare vlog, I picked this up at Rare because this is a beautiful special edition. The reason I was having a chat to the author about her books was because I saw this art print, which is for another book. And I just fell in love with it, and she gave me a copy of it because I asked very politely for one. And then I bought the special edition of House of Omega, and I'm really glad that I did. I really thoroughly enjoyed this. So this is the story of Grace, who is a beta. She belongs to a family who are trying to control her. Her stepbrother is not a nice alpha, and basically she hasn't found her mate, she's unclaimed. Her stepbrother is trying to do everything in his power to get her under control and basically use her as a sex slave eventually. But she's trying to get out from underneath that, and she is a perfume designer, or she works in that realm. And she is applying for a position at the House of Omega, which is a very prominent pack, and they do scents and they do clothing and all sorts of things. Her interview there does not go well initially, but on the way there she meets someone else who is going for a job. His name is Max. He is utterly adorable. He is the Omega of this story, and Grace and Max hit it off straight away, and they are inseparable. And eventually House of Omega wants Max, and he basically turns around and says, we're a package deal, you have to take both of us. The other thing that happened on her first meeting is that Grace met her mate, except he totally ignored her. And so that's another subplot in here. I went into this with an open mind. I really enjoyed it. I had a great time. I will continue the series, and I do want to read the book Not a Bed of Roses that this print comes from because the artwork is stunning. Am I shallow enough that you can sell me on a book by the artwork that you commission for it? Yeah, you probably can. Then I read Whisper by Tal Bauer, which is a behemoth of a book. Like, you could hurt somebody with this book. This is the last of his books in the backlist that I needed to read to complete my backlist reading of Tal's books. And I'm kind of glad I left this one to the end because, one, it's long. It's over 700 pages. Not the longest Tal Bauer book I've read, but definitely for the genre that it is, which is very much a political thriller with a queer romance attached to it. This is one that does require some time and some thinking, and it's not going to be for everyone because it's based around the 9/11 attacks, and it deals very heavily with that. So our main character, Chris, works for the CIA. He happens to work on the Afghanistan desk, and the book kicks off with the attack on 9/11. And it basically throws Chris into the deep end, and he becomes the expert on what is happening in the Middle East. And he is heavily involved in everything that happens as the US moves into Afghanistan and the Middle East. Editing stuff here. I forgot to say that even though this book does really heavily deal with all of that, which is ironic given what's happened in Venezuela over the last couple of days, this book does not glorify what the US was doing in the Middle East. In fact, it really shines a light on the horrific things that happened over there, and at times can be quite triggering. It does feature some very strong depictions of violence, but also torture that happened with prisoners of war. So just be mindful of that, because it is not easy in that sense. Even though I'm talking about it rather lightly, it's not because I wasn't feeling the full impact of the book. I've had about a week's remove from reading it. Afterwards, I actually sat there and I just had to sit and process for a couple of hours. It's full on. Chris is Puerto Rican, and David, who he meets over there, who is Special Forces, is a queer Libyan Muslim man. So the complexities of this story and the two men in the story involved in the story is there. And it gets unpacked in a lot of detail. Over the course of the time of working together, Chris and David fall for one another. There is a lot of on-page violence. There is a lot of on-page unpacking what it means to be American involved in this war, what it also means to be someone who recognizes that not everyone overseas is a combatant. Tal did an incredible amount of research. There's reference books and information about everything that he did in order to research this book to be as authentic as possible. It is based around real events in the timeline of everything that happened in 2001 through to 2011. While some things have been obviously fictionalized, like the timeline itself is fairly accurate, and we're following all of that while Chris and David are figuring out their relationship. They do end up married, and then they end up separated for a significant period of time, and then David's loyalty is cast into question because he is thought dead. I can't really say more than that because it spoils it, but it is a very hard-hitting read. It's very intense at times, but I'm so glad that I read it. Months ago, I got an arc of Bitter Burn by Sierra Simone, and this is the final book in the Lioness trilogy, and I finally read it. I think the thing with Sierra Simone's sort of mythology-inspired series is I just need to be in the right headspace to pick these up, because they are wild, full-on wild. So the Lioness trilogy is a retelling of the Tristan and Isolde mythology. It took me a second to catch up and remember that I was in book 3 and everything that happened in the first 2 books, because it is a polyamorous relationship between Mark, Tristan, and Isolde. Mark runs a very powerful sex club that deals in information. Tristan is hired as his bodyguard, and Isolde is the young woman who Mark has married as part of an arrangement with another prominent family. And of course you have the whole thing with Tristan and Isolde falling for one another, and at the end of book 2, Tristan and Isolde have left Mark. He is following them, but he's also going after this secret society that seems to be embedded with the church, because it wouldn't be a Sierra Simone book if we weren't also dealing with church shenanigans. In this series, Isolde is also an assassin for the church, and Tristan is the golden retriever of the relationship. It's not that he doesn't know or understand things, he is just the sweetheart. Mark will do anything, Isolde will do anything, and Tristan will do anything when he realizes what's going on. Anyway, this book is the three of them having to come back together, having to work together, having to face some separation between different people while trying to bring down the villain of the piece, who happens to be Isolde's uncle, which we know from the very start that that's who he is. It is fascinating. It is incredibly steamy. There is a lot of sex on page, and a lot of it is kinky sex, so just be mindful of that. I did follow up reading this with reading a novella that takes place after the series. Or I should say there's a lot of crossovers with the new Camelot series. A lot of the characters in both, it's a shared universe, so you see them a lot. And then there is a novella that Sierra Simone released after Bitter Burn called The Sleepover, which is basically a week where the new Camelot polyfamily and the Lioness polyfamily are together. And you have Mark and you have Ash. So Ash was the dominant in the new Camelot series, if you haven't read it. and he was trained by Mark. And so you have some really interesting dynamics because basically you have these two families sharing one another. It's all agreed upon. And Sierra Simone's note at the start of this novella is hilarious because she basically opens up with saying, this is bad kink. This is basically her writing fan fiction for her own thruples, literally throwing them together and seeing what happens. And it's wild. It was a fun time. I will say ultimately I probably didn't love Bitterburn as much and the Lioness trilogy as much as I enjoyed the New Camelot trilogy, but I have to go back and reread the New Camelot trilogy to make that proper comparison because it's been a while since I read it. Alrighty, and that brings me to my 2026 reads. I read her Cyborg Companion by Suzanne Hayes. This was another freebie that I picked up at Rare. So I did see Suzanne Hayes there. Suzanne Hayes is a Canadian author, but she's married in Australia and she now lives here, which is kind of fun. This is part of the Drift Haven Colony series. I think it's the first book in that series. Maggie is one of a number of women who have been sent to Haven Colony as part of a colonization scheme, and also these women will eventually be mates for the people that are living there. I think this is attached to a couple of other series. That's the illusion that I'm getting to it because there's some backstories going on. However, the women which selected by lottery, Maggie believes that she has schemed her way into this lottery and she lands on the colony. She is used to having to survive. She's used to scavenging and protecting herself. And she's also not used to being confined to a settlement, which the women are kept in one place so that they can learn about the history of the place, learn about the different species that live on the planet before wandering off and, getting themselves killed. She's not really one for that. She goes wandering in the woods all the time, and there she meets Stryker, who is a cyborg who has had to do terrible things in order to survive. And he's thought of as being really scary. He's had a throat injury. He had his throat cut. So while he can talk, he doesn't like to do it. It hurts to talk all that often. So sometimes he's talking, sometimes he's speaking through devices. It's how he and Maggie fall for one another. This would have been a really, really fun read if not for the third act, the inevitable third act ridiculousness in which Maggie confesses that, she thinks she rigged the system to get on the planet and Stryker loses it. I'm like, we didn't need that. There was enough going on with everything else in this plot that we could have gotten away without that. So that brought down the rating for me. Other than that, it was just like a really fun, easy read. I also listened to the audiobook of Dolly Parton's Songteller, which was by Dolly Parton. It's like a memoir of hers. And that was really interesting. It was narrated by Dolly, and I know a little bit about Dolly Parton, but I didn't know a significant amount, and this was available to read now on Libby. So I downloaded it, and it was really fun to learn a little bit about her life. There are snippets of her songs in there. She's talking about her songwriting process and her history with some of the songs and how they came about, and it was just really delightful. Like, it was just really fun. And it's interesting because I think you listen to Dolly Parton talk and she's obviously very religious. She has a lot of faith, but the way she talks about it, it doesn't come across as preachy. But even when she was talking about it in her book, it never felt like she was trying to throw it on other people. It was just like, no, this is how I work and this is what I believe and this is how I live my life. And this is how I create my songs and my stories and the different things that she's done in her life. So I found that really interesting. And then the last book that I read this week was The Rise of Neptune by Scott Reintgen. This is one of the series that I wanted to catch up on this year. I suspect book 3 may be coming out this year, in which case I will need to add it to my series read. But this means I'm officially caught up on one series from my bingo board. This is book 2 in the Dragon Ships series. This is a upper middle fiction, science fiction series about different colonies on different planets. Basically, the planets and the moons all have dragons attached to them, and the dragons protect the planets or the moons. And humans have been created because of the dragons. And so there's a really interesting mythology that you get in book 1. Whereas book 2 is about a dragon coming from Neptune. So it's one of Neptune's moons, Triton, who is attacking the Mars colony. And so you have Dread, who is the dragon of Mars, who is a reincarnation of Ares, who was the original dragon of Mars. And all of his humans, including his dragoon, his dragon rider Luna, trying to fight back against Triton and a number of other dragons and the humans from Neptune who may or may not be aware of what's actually going on. This is a really cool video game ethical feel to it, like without spoiling it. If you don't know that what you're doing is real, how do you feel about it kind of concept, which I loved. So love this. absolutely love this. I thought this was great. I think this is a really fantastic series and I cannot wait for book 3. So 2 project books that I read that you're going to hear about a little bit later on are Reckless Refuge by Cowles and also Infamous Heart by Ryder O'Malley. So that video should hopefully be coming out in the next couple of weeks. I'm currently reading 2 other books. So my current audiobook read is Entangled Life, How Fungi Make Our Worlds, Change Our Minds and Shape Our Future by Merlin Sheldrake. I'm also reading The Teach Like a Champion Guide to the Science of Reading. This is something that I was gifted as a present from a colleague at work. And I don't know if I've talked about it with you guys, but I struggle sometimes with books for my work. So I have to figure out how to read them. So I've actually sectioned it off and I'm reading a section at a time with this. And it's really good so far. It's actually quite easy to read. I've got a lot of tabs and things I want to come back to at some point. I haven't started highlighting or writing in the book yet. Just because I wasn't sure how I was going to go. I want to get a bit further of the way into it and then I'll come back and do that sort of stuff. But lots of ideas for this year. I'm also going to read books 3 and 4 in the Chicago Thunder series. So there is Defensive Zone and Power Forward. So those are going to be rereads. And I'm also hoping to start my buzzword reading vlog sometime this weekend and have it up maybe by the end of the week. So fingers crossed that happens. And that is the first official weekly book steep for 2026. This video is not as long as I thought it was going to be, which is probably a good thing. In the comments, I'd love to know, have you read any of these books? Are you planning on picking any of them up? Feel free to let me know, or feel free to share some of the first books that you're reading or starting in 2026. I'd love to know. I need a drink break. Pause, please. It's a good thing we're at the end of the video because I really need to turn the air conditioner on. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a dragon emoji. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're on the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.